So welcome to our recording 9th of April 2025. So it's almost a week after President Trump's Liberation Day. Joining me here is Lyra.
Hello.
And we want to talk about tariff, right? And even right now, at the time of recording, America just imposed 104% tariff on all Chinese goods, and China has retaliated with 84%.
Yep.
So why the 20% difference? That's what we've been saying, right?
Well, the layman term is that they want to appear to be more amicable, less retaliative as US, perhaps.
Yeah, probably. I mean, of course, now it sounded a bit funny, but the last few days, the stock market has been really, really bad. Crypto has been really, really bad. So there's a lot of economic uncertainty, and a lot of people are kind of a bit afraid also. So you see the sentiment, and maybe people who are not so interested in macroeconomy are kind of like, maybe they read from the news, they see the chart, and our government doesn't really say so much, right? So, but do you feel like, I mean, just your interaction with your friends, are they concerned about what is happening, or they felt like maybe this is a bit beyond us?
Well, to be frank, I think a lot of them, they couldn't quite care less.
So a bit ambivalent like that.
I think so, because a bit like perhaps it reflects the sentiment of our national leaders as well, that they are a bit cautious, but it's not like, well, we try not to be overly anxious about this whole thing. So I don't really actually hear a lot of discussion among my group of friends or colleagues. They are almost like couldn't be bothered because there's like a lot of day-to-day sort of work to be done.
So even when I look at like on ads, for example, where there's a lot of discussion on government matters, where the globalists and the MAGA people, all the different factions, I see some discussion, but like what you were saying, a bit cautious, because I think a lot of people cannot really see the end game, and maybe they don't quite understand. I mean, to be fair, I don't think anyone can predict what will happen in the next 48 hours.
Well, to be fair, I've heard a lot of comments, and even I read a bit of news article as well, that a lot of people are rushing to Apple store to buy iPhones. I mean, there are a lot of concerns that, okay, because of tariff, then all this price hike and things like that is going to be affecting the people. And I think that is even the top point by our politician as well. I mean, just today I kind of like watched a little bit of clips from Goloska Job, and KJ was just saying that, hey, actually it's the American people that is going to be like most affected. So what's in it for them?
What is it for them? I think that's a really good question, and that's one of the purpose we want to do here. Because when you look at the news reporting from like Malaysia, for example, it's just very, very negative and very pessimistic. I don't think people are trying to understand what President Trump is trying to do. And we did a few episodes, on elections, on election promises. So tariff was mentioned, but that's not the main theme of those episodes. But it's not a real surprise that he imposed tariff.
No.
Probably what was surprising is the degree and the breadth of the tariff, the reciprocal tariff to every nation on earth. So some people are saying that while Trump is declaring war on every nation, and in a way he is, in a sense, it's not incorrect. That's what he's trying to do. He's trying to create certain kind of rebalancing, I guess. But of course, there are more things that he wants to achieve. So I guess one of the things we want to highlight, even at the beginning of this discussion, is that I feel people should try to understand what America is trying to achieve, rather than just say you are unreasonable, you are very bad, you are racist, or whatever kind of thing thrown at them. Because there is a method to the madness, right? I mean, people like to underestimate Trump, I feel, in the mainstream media. But we were just talking, like how the whole thing with the illegal migrants, with the securing borders, with deals, trying to achieve deal at Panama, Greenland, all these things, DOGE, they are all coming together. These are not isolated events. Trump basically wants America to be not taken advantage again. In fact, that was his election promise, right? You couldn't blame a president for fulfilling his pledges, right?
Yeah, I think, but perhaps tariff will be something that is really something that he's truly convicted.
Yeah, we always say Trump is not an ideologue, as in he is more of a deal maker. But I think if you can say one item which he is probably a bit more of an ideologue, it will be tariff. Because 40 years ago, he said the same thing.
Yep.
He was truly convinced and convicted that this is the right path to do. So he said that again. Remember, he said this is the most beautiful word in the English dictionary. So if anything, this is a topic. You see, like there were reports, but some people were denying that, Elon Musk tried to ask Trump to reconsider. I find it hard to imagine that he wouldn't have seen this coming. He would have seen this coming because, just look at the cabinet appointments, Scott Bessent, Peter Navarro, and look at how many times he mentioned about tariff, even during election campaign trail. But of course, it's really the degree that kind of shocked a lot of people. So today we're just going to run through some of the issue. Of course, at the end of the day, we want to talk about what about Malaysia, because I think when you look at the trade report produced by the trade office, like every country is mentioned, right? And we're just talking about it. It's just so interesting that it's like the entire NEP policy, our trade barrier, is being displayed publicly for everyone to see. So I always felt like there is an opportunity, but whether our government will undergo genuine reform or not, okay, I mean, we'll talk about that in a while. So people kind of familiar with tariff already, right? But I think maybe we can just, talk a little bit about that, because it's not something, I mean, in Malaysia, we kind of have like auto vehicle tariff, but we don't even use the word tariff, right? We use like what, import tax,
Excise duty.
Of course, we need approved permit, AP, and things like that. But essentially, it's a kind of taxation, right? And I think one of we talked about it in the earlier episode, we were all surprised that tariff was actually used in place of income tax in America for the longest time, because their government was so small. That was a bit shocking, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I didn't know that the whole introduction of income tax is relatively new.
For America, right?
Indeed, because I think it has been something so ingrained in any Malaysian that you wouldn't think of a time period where there wasn't any income tax at all.
Yeah, so the English saying, right, the only two permanent things are tax and death. And we know taxation existed in the British system for the longest time. Taxation is what caused one of their king to be beheaded. Taxation is what created the parliament, British parliament, that eventually limited the crown power. So they have a long love-hate relationship with tax. But America was founded on anti-tax. So that's why it's very, very different. And so after the founding, remember Alexander Hamilton, the first Treasury Secretary, his whole economic platform was built upon tariff.
Yep.
And we see again and again, US was successful in tariff. But anyway, I think just to let people understand, there's a lot of things people cannot just say, well, we don't do that, therefore you can't do that. Like Second Amendment, why Americans have guns. Well, you don't live in the Wild Wild West, you can't, it's just a different culture and things like that. Of course, people like to say Americans are very extra, and rightfully so, they have their own style, right? So Second Amendment, tariff also. So it's a tax, and generally we say it is to protect local industry. Now, did you watch a video, and there's like an EV car reviewer, right? And he was saying that, well, why are you criticizing America for tariff? Malaysia is keen on tariff.
Exactly.
And he used 40 years of Proton. So do you feel like, I mean, of course, we look at some of the other discussions on trade barrier. But when you look around at other countries, do you feel like maybe a lot of them also have tariff? Maybe they don't call it tariff?
Yeah, I do think so. I mean, especially it's really, really eye-opening when you saw when you see the whole report by U.S. administration, and basically it shows a lot of non-tariff trade barriers that you thought it's just something that existed in countries like Malaysia.
Yep.
I mean, then you don't realize, hey, actually China has been imposing a lot of trade barriers as well. I mean, you're more than welcome to buy my products, but then you can't really do business here in China without the approval of the government.
Yep.
And that is, you basically compromise a lot of intellectual property rights, and just to get a cut in the biggest market capitalization in China. So I think that's like not fair, but a lot of libertarian, they will argue that, hey, there is like free trade. I mean, obviously, if you're just comparing apple to apple, as in like tariff to tariff, then it will look like it's not a lot. But then actually you do have like a lot of all this subsidy that's coming in, the manipulation of currency that's coming in. All this thing, you don't actually equate them at the same level as tariff, because you don't see it as tariff. I mean, it's just like what you were saying, that there is a lot of like trade barriers. I mean, I don't realize when we saw how extensive, I mean, they did a good job in summarizing the trade barriers in Malaysia, that like a firm in United States that's trying to sell beef in Malaysia, you literally have to set out a different kind of factory just to get halal certification, and halal certification can only come from Joachim. So, I mean, isn't that like corruption at a different level? Because there's only technically those few qualified person that can verify the whole process.
Howard Lee from DAP say it's a cultural issue.
Well, I mean, it's not untrue, but I don't think that's
But it's a trade barrier. Would you agree it's trade barrier?
Most definitely. I mean, how about those that are I mean, you don't need to take kosher food. So you can, why aren't we being given that same right to buy things at a more affordable rates?
So here's the thing. I mean, since we talk about libertarian here, I mean, we saw some libertarian strongly against tariff. I mean, even some conservative one, so-called conservative people like Senator Rand Paul, or more obviously conservative people like Ben Shapiro, because libertarian has always been against tariff. Libertarian, their mindset is, I can disagree 100% with you, but I'll still let you express yourself. So, but here's the thing I don't understand with the libertarian. Okay, you say, so here's the criticism, because when the reciprocal tariff was announced, so they start to look at, okay, so how did Malaysia is what, 24%? 28, can't remember already.
Yeah.
20 something. So where did that come from? Oh no, actually they say Malaysia is 46.
Yes.
And then we give you discount. So remember Zafru, PMS all come out and say no such thing. Then of course, actually the US Trade Office already say, look, it's not tariff to tariff, it's not apple to apple. But that's why they bracket in their definition. The way we calculate tariff includes your trade barrier, which could be currency manipulation, any other barrier kind of thing. Of course, it's just an arbitrary number, because at the end of the day, they found out all the number that US placed on the nation is actually the percentage of trade deficit difference. Okay, so we know it's not apple to apple. So that's the reason why a lot of people start to say, American is very insincere in their computation because it's not tariff by tariff. Okay, fine. I think we can accept that they kind of play a technical game lah. But it still doesn't answer the question, are trade barriers against free trade? Because libertarian kept saying we are for free trade, but why are you okay with trade barrier? Why are you okay with European VAT, for all import? By the way, VAT is a bit like our GST. You will pay for it, the exporter will have to pay for it, but government will rebate back. So it's actually a subsidy. So all these things are trade barrier, but why is that not against free trade? That's a question I've been asking and nobody can answer. You look at Zafru, PMS, Malaysia Kini opinion pieces are all saying that it's very insincere, it's very wrong. Why isn't anyone answering about trade barrier? And the only one I saw is really Professor Jeffrey William. I think previously was with MSU, maybe still here. I mean, his expertise is ESG, sustainable, but he very interestingly he say what did he say? He actually said that it's a very reasonable thing. He said it's very reasonable kind of thing to do. But of course, he has a different view. Later we'll talk about what is Trump's overall objective. But to Professor William, he feels like it is just to balance the trade differences, okay? And so he's like, hey, we should just remove the trade barrier, because I think any economist in Malaysia, if you are really honest, you will know that affirmative action, NEP, is not going to help us to be competitive. We are already for the longest time, we are behind Singapore, right? And now, a lot of people, even in business sector, they say we are falling behind Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam,
Yep.
Cambodia.
Yeah.
Can you imagine eventually Laos also overtake us?
Oh my.
Once upon a time, we were number one. With Singapore, we're number one in ASEAN.
But here's the thing. The very thing about affirmative action is that, it is, people would like to say that it is based on equal opportunity, but it is not, because it's not the same level playing field, because basically what you're saying is that I want an equalization of results.
Yeah.
I don't care about equal opportunities, because some people deserve to be helped. And I really like what Scott Bessent was saying in the interview with Tucker Carlson. So he was just saying that, hey, actually, I think a lot of us don't realize, even with the stock market crashing and things like that, Trump is not like moving in a single inch. And that's because top 10% of the country basically owns 88% of the stock market.
Yep.
You're talking about ultra rich. The Mahakaya in Malaysia can't even begin to compete with
PMS, you
that.
look at that definition, right?
Exactly.
Before calling people off.
But what he said was that, okay, so then you have the next 40%, the middle income group of people own the rest of the 12%. You'll be thinking, then what happened to the rest of the 50% of the population, which is basically kind of like our B40 here, perhaps. So with this group of people, the conventional wisdom would be like, you give them handouts, you just help them out. And
Yep.
like what the Democrats would like to say, compensate the losers. But if you really think about it, like what Scott Bessent was saying, that these people are not losers. These people, he sees them as winners. And I think that's really like putting the interest of American first. And even our national leaders, they should really have that same mentality as well, putting the people first.
Yep.
If you say you want to really help the people, hey, get them out of that system that is not working. And
Correct.
he basically just said, what we are trying to do here is basically get them out of the system that is not working. Even like Tucker was like pressing him and asking, do you think you're going to see success? He said, well, all I know is that what we have been doing is not working. We should do something drastically different. And what presents our PMX would be that sort of opportunity to really do something different. And when it is so laid out publicly, I felt like there is like a way out for him to graciously transition Malaysia to a place where we no longer are viewed with like, okay, everyone has to be back with affirmative action. I think that there is actually a way. It's like, because you can kind of like use, hey, we have no choice but to cooperate with United States, and like those sort of things, and graciously cause Malaysia to transition over.
It's very, very interesting you mentioned about Scott Bessent's interview, because when he mentioned that 50% of Americans are in debt.
Exactly.
So it's like, wow, you have a systemic issue here. And of course, it doesn't show in terms of their GDP. It doesn't show in their GDP per capita, because you still have that 10% who owns 88% of Wall Street. But they say that you have the Wall Street and you have the Main Street. Main Street people are suffering. So it's because all the value is in stock, it's in speculation. But so that's why there is another theory talking about what is Trump's objective, is he wants to fundamentally reshift the economy from kind of stock-based wealth to actual manufacturing power, tangible business and tangible wealth. So of course, a lot of people, I think people are very cynical, and in this part of the world especially, I feel like people get into extreme, and especially people who are kind of influenced by the Chinese nationalistic
Exactly.
mindset, and the extreme mindset will be, China is like ascending and US is declining. I mean, the truth is really more in between. In fact, I think it was Conrad Black, the former House of Lords member, who is now a Canadian citizen. He's a very astute political commentator. He said 10 years ago, the conventional wisdom is that China GDP and economic size will overtake US any moment 10 years ago. Today, China is still about 35% behind. So it is like it's a saying, right? The news of my demise has been greatly exaggerated. But of course we have the other side, which is like very bullish. America cannot do wrong and things like that. So I think that the reality is more in between. But of course, I mean, you look at the 104% versus 84%. It's like everyone, involved. It's like the whole world is involved with these two nations, right? They are like, of course, they are in great anxiety because how do I proceed and things like that, In fact, Forbes came out with one article, which is, I mean, we can say outright, it is stupid and ridiculous. And he said, well, iPhone price could become 50,000 each. It's like, if I go to eBay and buy all the parts, it's not even going to cost 50,000. Okay, so this kind of hyperbole out there and just trying to create a lot of fear. But anyway, going back to your point about Malaysia, I mean, we want to talk about Malaysia as a separate topic, but since you already started, let's go there. And it's very interesting because we just kind of uploaded our episode on affirmative action, right? And I saw that's such a good point that people confuse equal opportunity with equal result. And in fact, even right now, you start to get people to say that, well, maybe people don't even need equal opportunity. But they'll be like,
how dare you?
How dare, yeah. But the whole DEI affirmative action is they want equal result. That's why you have quota, that's why you have mandate, that's why you have, but it doesn't work like that because you can't, you put something on the plate for someone, they are not going to want to earn it. And you need competition, you need creativity and things like that. But like what Besant was saying, these 50% who are in debt, they are not losers. They are actually harmed by a systemic kind of issue. So that's why, coming back to Malaysia, we have deep systemic corruption issue. We have deep systemic poverty issue. And interestingly, also in Keluarga Kerja, I just recently watched one episode, and KJ was asking Shahril, right? It's like, well, if you can be a prime minister, what kind of quality you think will be important? And Shahril say, well, I think the prime minister has to be someone that is willing to lose election. Because when you are not afraid to lose elections, you will deal with issue. And he mentioned affirmative action. So I of course, they will never dare to say they want to remove it. But there's a lot of hint. I mean, even Mahathir at one time say the tongkat has to be removed, but nobody really dare to go all out. So yeah, but that's really my first response when I saw the report was that, wow, the whole NEP is being displayed. Will anyone have the courage to deal with it? So, but we'll see. I mean, it's like, I mean, the main industry you can see most a danger is really Potong and Podua, right? It's like these two can really die, right? If the excise tax was taken away. And so many American stuff, right? I mean, we're just talking about it. It's like there is a difference, right? I mean, you buy cheap stuff from Shein and Taobao and things like that. Even IKEA is in that category.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. Some people say you can buy a furniture, you change every 6 months or 1 year, or you can buy one that can last for 5 years. In the end, maybe you spend the same.
Well, I think that's the thing. The whole thing about this whole issue on tariff, I think what get people very, I don't know, like unrest and agitated is because basically people are addicted to materialism and cheap stuff. I mean, basically you think it's value for money. It's really not, because you get you could be like getting crappy stuff, like what you mentioned, like having the sort of mindset, okay, every 6 months I will just change it, and the cost will still be far lower than something that is of quality product and bespoke design. But the thing is, we are so addicted to lousy produce. and we don't even realize it, and we think it's okay. And in a way, the government kind of like conditioned us to think that it is okay to just live on the bare minimum, and you don't need to really enjoy life. But the whole thing about the war against the middle class is that, hey, I mean, because obviously people work so hard in their life to want to be elevated to another level of lifestyle. So based on that, I mean, why should the government be dictating how I should be, what sort of orange juice I'm drinking, what sort of products I'm taking? I mean, whether or not I'm buying it from Jaya Grocer or I'm buying it from Giants. I mean, people should have the right to be able to choose, and all these things should be like quality produced. And but the thing is, Scott Besant also mentioned something that is interesting, because when people are addicted to like lousy produce and you get like inferior products, basically the lifespan of people, like the lifestyle and generally the life expectancy actually drop, because you don't eat like good stuff anymore, and people are like kind of like just addicted to like, well, I mean, I just need to get enough, that's it, but I would be willing to spend more like on European trips. So he said in 2024, I think, that you have the highest vacation in European countries, but you also have the highest amount of people that are using food banks.
Yes, it shows the class gap is getting bigger and bigger, and so it's very interesting, because this the whole point about how some people think that US will not survive this is because he said, well, the consumer will suffer, but well, it's like, so the mindset is, well, they definitely need to buy, but it's also true that all the nations who are given the reciprocal tariff, they also need to sell.
Yep.
So it's going to be a question of who blinks first, right? But of course, this leads us to the next topic, which I think we will not have time to discuss in this episode, which is basically the bigger macroeconomic geopolitical picture is that both China and US actually wants to begin to decouple from each other. And of course, to understand why these two economies were even together in the first place, we have to go back to the Cold War and how Deng Xiaoping opened out the country actually with a lot of financing from US Chamber of Commerce. So there's some kind of devil's deal there, but it's not really working out for people. So in a way, I think China doesn't mind decoupling, but now at the moment to decouple will be very harmful to them, because they have such they have a tough internal economy in terms of their consumption, their housing. People are not buying things, so to continue their strong economic growth, they need to export.
Yep.
And if you cannot export to US, I mean, let's say the 104 and 84 mutual tariff stand, basically, I mean, unless Walmart wants to absorb 100% for cheap China goods, which I don't think they want, they will just put there, oh, sorry, not available for a while. And after a while, people will be like, okay, do I really need that cheap socks? Do I really need that bookshelf and things like that? So, after a while, people just kind of get by. But then the next part of the trade war will be, then China needs to find market to dump their product. And this was a concern by ASEAN and EU actually. EU already is a very, very concerned. And in fact, Vietnam already attached a tariff against anti-dumping on steel. This is one product. And in fact, there are whispers that even Malaysia wants to do that. Can you imagine Malaysia apply tariffs to China? Ooh. And Euro and vice versa? So probably Trump will like, I'm waiting for this. Let you all fight. So, but it's all very complex. But I think we will do another episode on the decoupling, because it's important to understand that in a way, I am a bit sympathetic also to how President Xi is having to deal with this, because it is a legacy issue from Deng Xiaoping, from Jiang Zemin, Hu Jintao. They colluded with the American Chamber of Commerce. So he wanted to get away from that. But of course, the way he do it is kind of like, kind of the Marxist way, But anyway, let's talk about the next thing, which is what is the real objective of Trump? Of course, we already mentioned Professor Jeffrey Williams say, trade balancing, which he felt like is very, very fair. But I read an article by Critical Spectator, actually, Michael Petrus, 9th of April is today. And the title is called "Why Nobody in the World is Reporting the Truth About Trump's Tariff." It is really worth reading. In fact, he has kind of like a paywall to some article, but this one is free, okay? But he kind of mentioned 4 objectives that Trump wants to achieve, which I think really, I think for our viewers and listeners, this is very important because you see, we are here because we want people to have a better understanding of governance. We want Malaysia to do better and things like that. Don't get the wrong impression that we are supporting US or China. We are not. But it's really, I think when you want to deal with certain issue, you have to be able to understand the other side. Like Sun Tzu always say, right? You know your enemy, know yourself, and then know your enemy. So I feel this portion, Critical Spectator kind of summing up very well in terms of what is. So 4 key issue, right? He mentioned, right? So I just quickly go through that, and then maybe you can give some comment, right? So what's the 4 key issues? So he said number 1 is trade deficit, which we already mentioned, and this one, Jeffrey Williams is the one who say, well, if you don't open to US market and you have a lot of trade barrier, you should remove it. It's very, very reasonable, So I can imagine he's thinking about NEP and all this kind of thing. So trade deficit. Then of course, then you have 30, 40 years of the shifting out of manufacturing, job losses created by relocation. So Trump wanted to reverse that because that goes back to what you mentioned about percent, 50% in debt. Then federal budget deficit every year. I think people can't really comprehend what is the annual national budget of America is 6 trillion 1 year. And there are like 40 plus trillion in total debt. So that's the last 2 issues. Budget deficit and then national debt. So what's your, when you look at all these things and kind of compare with Trump's election campaign, so what do you make of that? It's like, maybe let me frame it to you in such a way, because when you look at all the issue and his election campaign, it's very clear that he needed to do this. Joe Pollard, of course, a senior editor from Breitbart, he is also a bit jittery about the whole tariff kind of thing, and he's like, so he asked 2 questions: is it necessary to do this? And if there's basically, is it necessary for the pain to be applied now? Okay, so what's your comment to all this?
Well, I think so. Better because I do think the.
Do you think the timing, the timing? You agree that the timing is correct from American perspective?
I do think so. Even globally as well. You are at the time where George Soros was stepping down, and
interesting.
He was like stepping down, and then you also have like all this like the whole effort against deep state. Trump basically was the one who coined the term like draining the swamp. So I think this time round, the team that he has assembled, I think they are really, really tight-lipped about the whole tariff situation. You don't hear a leak at all until the Liberation Day.
It was a shock to a lot of people, right? Even some of the MAGA conservative, They were a bit blindsided by it. You have to give credit to Trump's team for really keeping it tight. And when it's announced, I don't know, maybe Besant, Navarro, a few people will know the full detail.
Yeah, and I listened to some of their interviews that they have conducted. They have been giving. And it's really interesting because they genuinely do have a heart for the Americans. And I think that's something to be admired about a president. Whether you like his policies or not, I think he does have the intention, and he would like to be the president for the working middle class people. And that has always been the biggest group of people that have been voting for him. And with that, I do think that he has nothing to lose, and he just felt like the timing is right. Obviously he can't go into like midterms, then only then starting to do certain things. Even I felt like the lessons that he have learned from the first tariff with
Yep.
China. I mean, it took about like 2 years or so.
For the
and
stage one.
Exactly. So
And China didn't fulfill any of the promise.
exactly. I mean, so with
And
that,
EU
I
also.
felt like he just like decided to give the world a shock treatment. And basically everyone would just be coming to the table. And I mean, you even see like Japan sending their top teams to go to US for negotiation. I mean, even Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was going there as well. I mean, with all this thing, I felt like he is causing the world to choose whether or not you want to decouple from materialism or like an even globalist sort of mentality, or you want to come into that place where you could possibly leave a legacy for your own nation. And I think he's not like intentionally going after affirmative action in Malaysia. I don't think so. But I do feel like because in his heart for the Americans and him wanting to like basically just bringing back all the manufacturing industry into United States for the benefit of the American, and that I felt like the timing couldn't be more impeccable, and it's really, really strategic. I mean, but they were also very strategic in the sense that you go for Panama Canal, and I mean all these strategic places first, and then you begin to like negotiate this whole tariff issue. And I think people don't realize how much trade deficit there is, and I think there's also another mindset where we don't realize how bad money printing is. I think he's just wanting to like make it like lean, and you can do things at a very efficient way with less resources. Why not? So I think he's like just trying to show a prototype to the nation, and that's something that a lot of nations could begin to learn. And I think he's truly a true proponent of like small government and no waste, and why should we have more waste. And I think he really means it when he say this is the golden age of America.
Yeah, and I mean you mentioned all the right points. In the first term, he gave Europe a lot of time, he gave China a lot of time, and they did not fulfill a single promise. Then of course the threat of midterm and things like that. And also you can really see a lot of people kind of, it's not official, but they credited reciprocal tariff plan to Peter Navarro. Now of course some people don't like what he's trying to do, but do you know that Navarro was a Democrat in the 70s, 80s?
I have no idea.
So he come from the trade union kind of thing. So he is very much involved with the struggle with the blue collar and things like that. So that's why he come up with this to force a deal. And also, you see, at the end of the day, you see that Trump is his own man. He will get advice from Elon Musk and things like that. So in this instance, Musk is trying to show his displeasure against Navarro and things like that. But you could see that Trump is very confident with Navarro's point of view, at least on the tariff issue, and he's running with that. Then, of course, the other person really influenced him will be Steve Bannon, because Steve Bannon is the one who coined the term flood the zone. Flood the zone meaning you're just going to create so many issues, and that's why people are saying, what is the madness? Why the madness of reciprocal tariff at such a high rate? It's because he wants people to make a decision quick. If I give you 3 months, 6 months, you probably all try to collude together. I mean, even if the entire world come together against US, which, I mean, it's not going to happen in this. It's just not realistic enough. But even then, yeah, I mean, worst case scenario, let's have 2 or 3 different trade systems. So now one of the things, let me ask you, do you think it is a possibility that we will see like dual or even triple kind of trade system concurrently?
Maybe. I mean, with the BRICS system that is like trying to
BRICS system, then you see like now there's a push for digital central currency, because they basically wants to de-dollarize, I think. So that's the topic we'll talk about in decoupling. And I think the other thing is they want to, all the banking system is a SWIFT system, right? And of course, unfortunately, in the past, America have weaponized it with unjustified sanction and things like that. So there are people who are not happy. But of course, for you all to come out and, like BRICS has been around for a long time, but it's always those core nations. Then when you get Malaysia, Indonesia wanting to join BRICS also, I always felt like that's part of the thing. I remember Trump was issuing through social, right, that everyone who is on BRICS must give a written confirmation that you will not stop using US dollar. Otherwise, you will get, I don't know, 200 or 300% tariff, something like that. Like that's like a message to a country like Malaysia, for example.
Yep.
But of course, there's just one point for people to consider right now. People always think that China will want yuan to be the dominant currency. Not at all. China doesn't want yuan to be the dominant currency. They want yuan to be as low as possible. That's why one of the retaliatory move is to, they sell all the US Treasury bond so that the yuan became low. I mean, this is the way they run things out. There's no way they want the money to go up. So if you don't use yuan, what else can you use? Indian rupee, Brazilian, I don't know. It's like just I don't think it's so easy. I mean, of course, people talk about it like so casually because in the 20th century, US dollar kind of replaced pound, kind of like seamlessly and things like that. But you have to be like a dominant economic producer, not just in terms of export. Overall, your economy has to be there. Of course, China is on the way, but that's why I say the timing is not great for them because of their internal turmoil. If this thing happened 5 years later, I think China will be in a much better position to respond.
True.
But right now, there will be a lot of pain. But I think more pain on China's side. But anyway, we covered so many different things, and also some of the more technical things we didn't cover. But let's kind of wrap it out already. And coming back to Malaysia again, of course, we already talked about the opportunity. So I think it was Minister Fahmi who said today that there will be a response by ASEAN, right? And I know during dinner time, we kind of say, well, nobody dare to predict what will happen in 7 days, 1 month. But in terms of Malaysia, you want to give a try? Like in terms of, or even generally, like what do you foresee? Maybe let's just talk about like 2 to 4 weeks, so that the next time we're back for recording, we can kind of review. I mean, just what you think might happen.
Well, I guess it depends on the visit by President Xi to.
It's already confirmed, right? I think 13 to 15, so it's middle of next week.
I think there will be a certain amount of pressure that will be given directly by
China,
or
right?
indirectly. Yes, I think my hope. I mean, I'm not sure what the Malaysian government will be doing, but my hope is that Malaysian government will take the right move, as in they truly be neutral about the whole thing. And I think what US is trying to do as well is that they are, I guess this will be a great opportunity for our Prime Minister to be truly a Prime Minister for Malaysian rather than a Prime Minister for Palestinian causes. I think that gives him a platform to, in a way, decouple from all this Middle East issue and actually just be a bit
decouple
more
from his Abing origin.
correct. So I think, and really get into that, like literally just put on the reformers hat and basically get the work done for Malaysia. I mean, because it has been more than 2 years now, then we have not really seen much reform.
Yep.
And unlike what the Trump administration is doing, I mean, promises made, promises kept. So my hope is that Malaysian government will definitely be one that is sticking true to their promises, and he would actually be a prime minister that is truly like what Shario was saying, that he's not afraid
to lose
losing.
election.
Exactly. And with that, I think, I mean, even DAP, they could come out to a different kind of position instead of like kind of like just being labeled as a yes man sort of party. And they could also chart a way out and begin to like really see that Malaysia can truly be a rainbow nation. So I honestly hope that Malaysia will be less, because I guess Malaysia has always had the tendency of going extreme. You are either here or there. So I hope they are not choosing the pathway of like really just reinforcing their ties with China and basically like breaks with all this position, but rather really just allowing, because I think Malaysia is also very much dependent on the export of oil.
Yep.
I mean, with US now, it's like going full on drilling. I guess you want to know who your allies are.
Yeah, I totally fully agree with you. And when you look at the last few years, I mean, even going back to Najib, I think the pivot away from US and towards China already happened at that time. And in fact, many people have said Prime Minister Najib was the most China-friendly prime minister ever. And of course, they were, China were buying things also, but they were also giving loans for infrastructure, Belt and Road project and things like that. But of course, Belt and Road, the judgment is still out there, but a lot of country who was not able to repay the loan, it's just a very tough road for them. And we don't want to get into that kind of systemic lending that we cannot, it's like how people spend beyond their means, have 8 to 10 credit cards and things like that. Many nations get addicted to the easy cash of the Chinese. And then you become like Sri Lanka, Maldives and things like that. We don't want that kind of things to happen. So even right at the moment, I feel like Malaysia is already not neutral enough. My personal opinion is that I don't think US is asking a lot, because we are not in those manufacturing tier which Trump needs to deal very directly in terms of against China. You talk about Vietnam, Korea, Japan, India, even Australia, Canada, Mexico. These are close trading partners of China, and also, in some ways are proxies. And so he needs to do. So Malaysia less affected by that, because our major exports to US, computer parts, silicon, high-tech printer, things like that. Those are, for the time being, still not quite covered by tariffs. So it looks like the Trump administration is not asking for that kind of adjustment. So in the end, maybe just 10%, which is very livable. But pivot in a neutral way. Pivot away from your Palestine heavy, with your Erdogan heavy kind of thing. But that's a challenge for our PMX, right? Could he do that? But of course, he may not agree with this assessment. But this is the opportunity I think we both can sense this time, right? So yeah, I think it'll be very interesting when President Xi come, and how, and I'm also eager to find out which country will strike the first deal with America first, because I think Trump will reward that country greatly.
Indeed. I mean, because even Trump administration was saying that basically whichever person that strikes the first deal, you want to be that first person rather than being the last nation that is striking the deal.
And so many people are kind of on the way, on route, Vietnam delegation, South Korea delegation, even Malaysia is sending a delegation, Zafru is leading. Okay, one last question, and then we're kind of wrap up already. So do you really think ASEAN can come out with a response given their track record?
I think so. I think if enough Southeast Asia countries, I mean, especially like Vietnam, Indonesia, I mean, even like Singapore.
But they all have their own different issue, right? I mean,
correct.
It's like, could they, I mean, how would you imagine a unified response?
I think a unified response would be making a great deal with US.
Okay, so a positive unified response rather than a unified,
correct. I mean,
reciprocal return tariff.
I think it will be more harsh if, let's say, they
all say want to fight like another 84%. I think they'll be the end of ASEAN for a while.
Correct. So I think rather than that, I think, I mean, being the president, being the head of ASEAN, Malaysia should really be that one that is leading the whole charge, and basically, hey, like rally the support to let's quickly get a deal from US government, and let's see how it pans out. Because for Southeast Asia, I think they stand a lot to benefit from all this.
Yeah, open up the market and things like that. But anyway, I think we kind of talked enough already for this episode. And I mean, if you have any viewers and listeners, any questions, any topic you want us to explore, actually a lot of other things in our notes we have not even had the opportunity to talk about. But we definitely want to do one episode on the decoupling, and maybe depending on after presidency and what's the next development, we could probably do a part 2. Sure. Because I don't think there'll be a quick and easy fix, right?
Yeah, probably we'll see a lot more of this all the way, I don't know, until May, June.
Yeah, because it's like the trade system is fundamentally being altered for better or for worse. So I think I'll end with what Michael Petrus, critical spectator, he said, well, people should try to understand what Trump is trying to do, and you can even feel sympathetic because of 40 or 50 years of this just hollowing of the whole manufacturing. But whether that will work or not, nobody knows.
Yep.
But like what Scott Besson said, what we're doing is no longer working. We have to try. So I think it's the same like Malaysia. What has been working, what has not been working, we should try something else. But is there a political courage? But anyway, that's all the time we have for today. So until next time, remember to post your questions or comments, and we will try to kind of answer them if we can.
We should.
All right, bye-bye for now.
All right, bye.